I'm going to be talking about teacher associations globally before handing over to my very good colleague and friend Amol, who's going to talk about teacher associations in India. That's the plan. Before I do, I just want to say a big thank you to several people. Firstly, to the High Commission of India in London for granting me a visa. Thank you very much. I'd also like to say a very big thank you to my sponsor, who allowed me to be with you today, which is the British Council. And could I just have a show of hands of people who work for the British Council? Could you just put your hands up? So I think these people deserve a round of applause for all the work that they do. Thank you very much. Could I just ask you to raise your hands if you have personally been helped in your professional development by the British Council in some way? So that's a significant number of people in the room. Thank you very much, as have I. Now, I'm here for IATEFL, and I was going to invite you to tell me what it stands for, because it doesn't stand for the International Association of Teflon Frying Pan Manufacturers. But I think Sarah's already mentioned what it is. But before I get into this, I have to thank these people, because without them I wouldn't be here either. And can you see any kind of family resemblance here? Can you see any? Huh? We've all got glasses, yes. That's a subset of people wearing glasses. Absolutely right. You might actually notice that this is actually my mum, and this is my dad, and this is my Auntie Marjorie, okay? Don't forget my Auntie Marjorie. Don't leave her out of this. Anyway, they're the reason I'm here, because when I was growing up, my mum was a primary school teacher, and my father was an accountant. So you can imagine growing up, there were two things I was never, ever going to get into. One was teaching, and the other thing was anything to do with finance. And then 20 years later, I found myself the treasurer of a teachers' association. So thank you, Mum and Dad. Thank you. So I've actually got 12 minutes now, so I better get a move on. Here's what I would like to briefly mention to you. What are the challenges confronting teachers? How can TAs help develop quality teaching? How can TAs help develop quality schools, sponsors, partners, and other associations? So that's what I would like to do. Okay. What is IATEFL? Well, as we know, it's the International Association of Teachers of English as a Foreign Language. Can I just check, is anyone a member of IATEFL? One or two people? Yes, excellent. Anybody who's not a member yet? Quite a few people. Excellent. Okay. This is our mission, to link, develop, and support English language teaching professionals around the world. So that is what we do. What we don't do is politics. It's not a trade union. It's an association which is devoted to helping teachers on their professional journey. That's what we're there to do. Okay. And these are the kinds of people who we support and who we help in their development. So do we have any teachers and teacher educators in the room? Quick show of hands. Okay, excellent. Any researchers? One or two people, yes. Administrators and academic managers? Ooh, there's quite a lot of those. Excellent, okay. Writers and publishers? Quite a lot of people. Language assessors? Quite a few people there. And examination boards? And finally, consultants. Great, excellent. Okay, so you could all join IATEFL and you can be part of our family. Okay, so how do we link, develop, and support? Firstly, we have an annual conference, and I'll mention that in a minute. We also have 15 special interest groups. We have newsletters and publications, online webinars and discussion groups. And we're also linked to over 100 teacher associations globally, including LTI, and in about 10 minutes, INET, as we're going to sign our associates agreement. Okay. So the starting point for us is the teacher. Now, Abdul Kalam said, teachers are the backbone of any country, pillars upon whom all aspirations of the country are placed, and the ones who can turn dreams into realities. the pillars. The question is, who supports the pillars? Who supports the pillars? Because as I understand it, the challenges faced by teachers today are as great as they've ever been. Hargreaves talked about the intensification of teaching, the 1,001 things that teachers have to do today. Would you agree? The role of the teacher is becoming more and more complicated. Many teachers find themselves isolated, undertrained and underdeveloped, under-resourced, underpaid and under pressure. That is the current reality for teachers. As someone said, teachers today need to be up front, up for it, up to date and up early in the morning. The teacher faces these challenges, and how can we help teachers to face these challenges? Well, for every complex problem there is a solution that is simple, neat and wrong. There is no simple solution. There is no simple solution. But I think teacher associations can be part of the solution in partnership with other groups. So TAs help to fill the gap between the current reality and the dream that we all believe in, which is 21st century learners being taught by 21st century teachers using 21st century resources in 21st century buildings. And that's what I think a teacher association is about. Now, how do we fill the gap? How do we fill the gap between the policy and the poor old teacher who is the pillar of everybody's dreams? Well, with the greatest respect, I think we do it through the effective mediation of all of these groups. And I'm delighted to say that I stole this particular idea from the CPD book that we've mentioned, and it's in Amol's chapter. And we need to work together, the mediating bodies, in order to bridge the gap between policy and the teacher. And there's the book yesterday, which is an interesting one because we have British Council represented here, Amol, who is the leader of a teachers association, and there is Professor Panda representing the policy makers. Right, now, back to Abdul Kalam. He said, I'm not a handsome guy, but I can give my hand to someone who needs help. And that's what teachers associations do. Firstly, the isolation through face-to-face groups, and Amol will be saying more about that, through online communities, etc., etc., etc. And we help to create a global home for teachers. Underdeveloped, well, we help through workshops, webinars, and conferences. For example, we put on monthly webinars, and the thing I have to say is these are available to everybody. So those of you that have still got a little bit of CPD to do today, you can go along to the webinar which is taking place this evening and access how to access CPD. So this is something that's put on freely for teachers. Anyone can access the webinars. You don't have to be a member of IATEFL. We also have an annual conference, which next year will be in Manchester. And if you're thinking, yes, but how do I get to Manchester? It doesn't matter because Manchester comes to you. You can join the conference online, thanks to our partnership with the British Council, and you can access all of the plenary talks and lots of the other talks. Once again, absolutely free to members and non-members. Specialization, I don't know if you can read that, it says at the bottom, no, you can't be a lawyer, it's handbags or shoes, that's it. You're in a situation of putting on perhaps CPD for your teachers, but how do you help them to specialize? For me, every teacher is unique. You see that? You might recognize somebody there. That's my younger brother. And Nandan Nilikani with the unique identification code. I think every teacher has got a unique identification code, don't you think? They have to follow their own particular path, and we help to do that through our special interest groups. So we have 15 special interest groups which help teachers to develop in the way that they want to develop. And I'm very aware of time, but all of those different interests are represented in IATEFL, and each of them put on newsletters and their own and their own webinars. So that's a little bit about IATEFL. So this week, what's going on in IATEFL, for example, Research SIG have been discussing managing innovation. At the same time, while I'm here, the SIG that I'm most involved with, the Leadership and Management SIG, they're having a face-to-face event in London. And as I mentioned, the CPD webinar today is by Fiona Dunlop. So I think we're an active association, and I hope that's given you a little taste of how TAs can help raise quality standards. We have links in over 100 countries, and our members live in over 100 countries, and 114, I counted this week, actually live in India. So, we do things through partnerships, and one of the partnerships we have is with the British Council, and I want to thank them once again for sponsoring me to come here, and also to make a little plug for the Teacher Educator Conference, which is going to take place next February in Hyderabad. Final point, real education enhances the dignity of the human being, increases his or her self-respect. If only the real sense of education could be realized by each individual with the guidance of the teacher and carried forward in every field of activity, the world would be a better place to live in. And we are all in the position of creating that better world, working together. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I was looking forward to a follow-up quiz by George. You had a pack of chocolates.
Yes. Can I?
No, do you have a quiz in your mind?
Sorry?
Quizzing people and having a quick test.
No, these were Quality Street chocolates, which I thought were an appropriate gift to give everybody for this conference, yes.
So you can see George has been partly sponsored by Quality Chocolates.
Yes.
Your food has been sponsored by them, right?
Yes.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, we have to be aware of all the agencies and people who bring us to these destinations. I will carry on from where George left. He talked about 21st century teaching and learning and teachers and learners. And this is one of the posters that we have prepared at INET for promoting teachers' development. And the key point was the emergence of a new kind of teacher. The conventional, traditional notion of teacher no longer holds in the current scenario. And we have to be prepared with not only different set of skills or knowledge, but a very different mindset altogether. By the way, all these posters are free to be downloaded from the INET website. In case you have any trouble, please write to me. My email is there. I'll give it in the end of this presentation. I'm going to talk about the other side of this coin, the coin of teacher quality and the role of teacher associations. If we raise this question of teacher quality and ask all these people, all these stakeholders about their perspectives, their understanding, their notion of teacher quality, I believe we will get very different kinds of answers. How an administrator thinks of teacher quality is different from how policymakers see, or education authorities see, or parents see. And these all often differ from what teachers themselves think about their own quality. And this metaphor also reminds us that we cannot ignore or discard these different perspectives. They are all valid in their own ways, but at the same time, they represent only a part of the whole scene. If we are going to think holistically, we have to take all these perspectives on board. So what I'm suggesting, I'm proceeding with the assumption that in spite of all these differences in perspectives, there is some common core, And in that common core, teacher quality is ultimately tied up with teacher performance. We think of quality in terms of teacher performance, and that performance is linked up with teachers' development. Because we don't want the person who comes maybe 20, 21 years old to an institution to stay there till the end of his or her career in spite of advancing in age. We want that person to change and change for better. And we hope that as that person changes, the institution changes, the students benefit, the community benefits. Now, in case of professional development, teachers improving their own qualities, or other agencies trying to contribute to enhancing teacher quality, there are different priorities. I don't want to give an impression that these are the only three kinds of priorities, but I'm choosing them as the top priorities in development. The schools have their own vested interests in teacher quality, and they think of this teacher quality enhancement in these terms. Institutions are interested in ensuring effective teaching, or they want the curriculum to be properly implemented, or they want that teachers contribute to boosting of schools' image, etc. And of course, they want their learners to perform well if teacher quality guarantees that. The profession, teaching profession as such, has its own priorities. Just to list a few, the research, theory, practice, enhancement, or how teaching profession fits into the overall scenario of national goals of building up a good nation, a strong nation. All these are profession priorities. But then we also have to keep in mind that as individuals, teachers have their own personal priorities. For example, teachers, in terms of development, want not to be just teachers, but do something more. If I join as a teacher now, in a year's time or 10 years' time, I want to be a senior teacher, a consultant, a coordinator, a committee in charge, a mentor, a researcher, a presenter, whatever. I want to innovate and experiment in that small individual world of mine called classroom. On the one hand, I need freedom and autonomy to do that, but I also look forward to others recognizing me. And I myself finding satisfaction in my job. Now, if we look at all these dimensions, aspects, or all these ways of looking at quality, we notice that there are lots of gaps, lots of differences, as George earlier pointed out. One of the basic problems is, though the earlier picture shows a very nicely balanced distribution of these priorities, in reality it's a very skewed kind of distribution. The amount of attention and importance school priorities and profession priorities get is much larger in comparison to the attention teacher priorities get. And it is not surprising, because you will notice that the control and decision making happens in terms of school and profession priorities. There are mechanisms to ensure that teacher quality, as expected by institutions, is assured or at least supported. Funds and resources are available for all these priorities. There is support for this, there is recognition for this. And in case of teachers' own priorities, are there mechanisms? As an individual, I have my personal interests. Are those interests recognized by my school, by my education officer, by my examining board? Is there any system that automatically and regularly recognizes that and supports me for following them? Do I get opportunities? Do I get support to follow what I want to follow personally? So this is the place, this is the space where teacher associations and teacher groups, I would combine them together, they come into picture. As George already said, there are lots of things which teacher associations offers, like sharing and caring, conferences, seminars, workshops, training supports, publications, information dissemination, and an important thing, networking with fellow professionals. And a long list of so many other things which George has so elaborately presented just before me. What is the value of all this? The value is these kinds of events, activities, this forum called Teacher Association or Teacher Group offers the opportunity, the scope for an individual teacher to address his or her personal interest and priorities. This is the place where the individual gets really relevant and meaningful growth opportunities. If I want to be a presenter, then this is where I can try my hand and start testing myself. If I want to experiment and I need support from my colleagues, this is a place which offers me that kind of support. One of the important requirements in teaching profession, which schools can offer but don't really take it seriously, is this need for affective support, this need for sharing. As Jane Tompkins says, a very famous American educationist, says, teaching is a very, very challenging profession because you expose yourself every day publicly, and you are battered every day, and you can't talk about it to anyone. Having sympathetic colleagues, having a place where you can cry on each other's shoulders is really, really huge support. And this kind of support, an association may not offer by default, but an association always has a scope for every individual to find a small group continuing the theme, a subset within the larger set of members, where there are closer contacts, there are closer relationships. The important thing that is missing from school priority activities or profession priority activities is the choice and freedom and autonomy that teachers need. Unfortunately, in most teacher training programs, teachers are never asked, what kind of training would you like to go to? Or even a basic question, this is the training, would you like to go to the training? No, it's always a prescription. This is the training, pack your bag, your training starts tomorrow morning, you have to start this evening, no choice. This is not just for the training, this is sometimes even for a simple basic routine thing as a classroom experiment. And many times, there are very well-defined, rigid sometimes, guidelines. We use a euphemism for that, we call it the teaching plans. But those plans are actually teaching constraints in many cases. So if a teacher wants to play with the textbook, a simple thing like changing the sequence of teaching units, the teacher needs school head's permission. And more often than not, it's not given. So this freedom, autonomy, and choice is an important requirement which teacher associations and its activities can offer. And development quality has to be built on teachers' own personal initiative. A very interesting metaphor is often used for teaching. It's like a war. The commanders, the generals sit in the war room and make magnificent plans. They have wonderful strategies in place. But it is the final soldier in the battlefield who has in control of what to make of that plan. A good army can make that strategy work powerfully. And an even better, more motivated, determined army can see to it that the strategy completely fails. We teachers are quite expert in that. If we decide not to implement something, we won't implement anything. We will make all the show. On the surface, everything looks fine, but if you peep inside the classroom, nothing has changed. And we can manage that with an outward appearance of change. So unless teacher personally is on board, unless I take the ownership, I believe that, okay, these are the priorities of my school, but not because they are imposed on me, but because I also personally agree with those priorities, we can have a magic of change. How does this kind of sense come into teachers' mind? How this sense can be promoted? Well, of course, by good school leadership, by good policies, by a supportive atmosphere. But if all these are not really available, then teachers' associations and teacher groups can really help there. We have a very old association of English teachers in India called IATEFL, English Language Teachers Association of India. We also have another recently set up online community which George referred to, INET, All India Network of English Teachers. Then there are lots of associations in different states, districts, or regions and universities which are trying to make their little bits of contribution to teacher quality. But it's important that these associations come together, develop, and promote teacher participation more. I would like to conclude by saying that associations, the point George mentioned earlier, associations are very different from trade unions. And the primary purpose of associations is the professional well-being of the teacher. And those associations, even if I'm using the word association, those associations are not necessarily always very formal, well-structured, and legally enacted groups. It can be very informal groups. So while you take your time joining a professional association, what we can immediately start with is small groups, maybe based in one institution or one town, where we come together, start sharing and caring for each other, experimenting together, supporting each other, and then growing together. So this is all I wanted to say in terms of the role of teacher associations in ensuring teacher quality. Thank you very much. Thanks a lot.